Hitler had a small group around him. They were very close to him in his circle. And even they didn't like what he was saying, they couldn't leave him.
Mm-hmm.
They had too much knowledge.
Right.
And Obama has the same thing. He has a small group around him.
Right.
And even if they don't agree with him, they cannot leave him. They know too much about him. So what Hitler did, and what Obama, in my opinion, is doing, like this man who died mysteriously on a heart attack, because he was...
Andrew Breitbart we're talking about.
Yeah. He was coming out the next day with a report while this happened.
Right.
So he died of a heart attack before.
Yes.
And the man, the autopsy, all of a sudden he died too, because he knew more. So what Hitler did is that when he had a group, when he didn't like it, he sent a man out there or somebody and says, you go over there and you tell him, do you have a family? And that made him shut up.
I got it. He's saying, if you have a family,
He
in
said,
other words, shut up. Yes.
You go over there. This guy doesn't agree with my policy, but I want.
Right.
So you go. I don't go. I am a taboo. I cannot do this. But I have a man. You go over to the man and say, hey, you don't agree with what Hitler says.
Right.
So we all want to say, do you have a family over there?
Yes.
You know what that means?
That's threat.
A threat.
Yes.
And everybody backs off if they're being said, because I don't want my family to be killed.
Right.
So Obama is doing the same thing. He has a policy ahead of his strategy ahead, and he knows maybe some people don't like what he's doing.
Yeah.
I don't like this. Okay, Mr. Whoever it is, you go over to the guy now and tell him, do you have a family? And they all begin, they went, oh, yeah, we do what you want, they shake. They always chuckle in the booth and do what Obama wants. And Hitler had the same thing, Obama is the same.
Well, could you talk about what you talked about before, since I got the video running? Just a little bit about what you said about Peter Schiff and what you're worried about. Could you repeat it?
Peter Schiff is right.
Yeah.
But he cannot say the way that it really is. In my opinion, is that it will happen here in this country.
Well, talk about what you said about what you experienced, because you said you lived in Germany during that period where there was inflation.
All I can say,
yeah.
Hitler and Obama are the same. They go parallel. That's what I'm saying. I see step by step what he's doing.
But what did you see? You were just talking about that earlier, just so now I can let other people know that they don't. About there being hyperinflation in Germany.
Oh, the hyperinflation.
And what happened over there?
In 20. The hyperinflation. The reason why. And here, let me start from the beginning. Okay. What I want to tell you is this.
Yeah.
When Obama was running for presidency, he was groomed for it, and he took the right time. Hitler was the same thing. Hitler got on a regime because of the right time. We had in Germany the hyperinflation in the 1920s. People had no jobs, people had no money. People were unhappy, and they needed somebody to give them a better life. We had it here. The war started in 2001 under Bush.
Yeah.
And people were very unhappy with some instances on that. And they said, we are so unhappy what happened here. We want somebody who can help us. Hitler came out, I help you.
Yeah.
Obama comes out and said, we need a change. And that's what people wanted to have. Hitler on the high said, I help you, we need a change. Everything, Obama. And that's what the Germans said, Hitler.
Well, could you talk more about the Germans?
But I'm saying stupid. The Germans were just as stupid than the American people.
Yeah.
Most of them. There are some of them they understand. But German, that's why I said the Germans people were stupid too. In 1937, after Hitler was in the regime for 4 or 5 years, he knew exactly what he was doing, Hitler.
Yes.
He knew. The American people knew. He had 4 years to take over companies and factories and everything else. People didn't get a job till 1934. They were unhappy with Hitler. They saying, we don't have jobs. The unemployment was skyrocket high, Everything they had it with Hitler. All of a sudden, he swung it around, Hitler, after 4 years in his regime. In 1936-37, he started with infrastructure, He took the companies, he put the people to work, to ammunition, to tanks, and everything else. And people all of a sudden said, oh, we are happy now. We have jobs. Yes. It's wonderful, And they had all jobs. But what they didn't know is this, what Hitler had in school. He wanted to start a war. But nobody knew that because they were happy, they had jobs, they had money to spend on all that. And Obama is doing the same thing. We had the high uninflation, high unemployment, you know. Mark my word. He will, if he makes it into office, or before, we have a few more months to go, he puts everybody to work. Everybody has jobs. And all the companies he took over in the meantime, like Hitler did, he put the people to work. And they're all happy. Guess what? They will vote for him again.
We'll talk about what happened with the currency. You were mentioning that the dollar and the
high inflation we had. We couldn't even buy anything for the money. But we had overnight, unannounced, and this happens to any country, overnight my parents had to get all the money together, had to march to the bank, and I still remember this, all the money together, and they had to march to the bank for 100 German marks. They got 1 mark.
But before that happened, people didn't know, so it was a surprise.
Nobody had clue whatsoever.
So your point is that similar to today, where people don't realize what may happen.
People don't realize what will happen now. I see it happening because we had to go there. The high inflation, we're heading for a super high inflation. It was over there in my time, you know. And like I said, the deflation of the money, we got 100 marks, German marks, 1. And the day will come, we will have the same thing here. We have a high inflation where the money isn't worth anything anymore, you know. And we have to march overnight to the bank and get whatever curls.
So having seen it firsthand, what message would you give to the young people who haven't been through what you've been through? What advice would you give to young people right now that don't know what may be coming?
I really don't think the young people will understand it.
Well, that's why here you can explain it to them. You know,
the younger generation.
What advice would you give them? In other words,
you know, I try to tell them the advice is this: don't live beyond your means. Realize what is coming. Wake up.
But should they keep their dollars? Should they get gold and silver? Should they?
They should invest, but the young people don't have money to invest. Because what happened to you're young too, you know, but the older people, when the young people have money, they're living from a hand in a mouth, they do not know how to save money. They don't save money. They get the money, they spend the money. They want everything. They want the latest things, you know. Look at, when you go around, how the young kids are looking. They're closing. I went to the bank one time. She had fingernails polished, you know. And they said, look at this polish costs money. Oh, well, that's just a dollar, little money. That's when the saving starts. Deny yourself a lot of things. Make a sacrifice. Save the money up. And prepare yourself for the future, what is coming, because the future is not really nice, what is coming ahead of us, and that's what I can say. Prepare yourself for it. But the young kids are not prepared for that. As far as I'm concerned, in order to make the young people, make them wake up, it has to happen in this country to make them wake up.
But then it'll be too late. So that's the point.
It's too late.
That's the reason I'm videotaping you, for people to hear this.
When you go back
instead of after the fact.
Let me tell you, when you go back in history, every 50 years, a war cleans up the air.
Well, don't you think it's every 50 years because they don't remember? Because by then it's a new generation, and they have been through it as well.
See, the thing is this: I lived with nothing. You know, I was poorer than poor. I value a penny. It's money to me. The young kids don't value this anymore. Let's be honest, it's just a penny, you know. Our younger generation, the baby boomers, and probably baby boomer too, they have grown up with good times only. And they're used to getting everything. And the reason why it is, the older generation, myself, we are actually in fault. Because we went to bad times and we wanted to have our kids this better. We did it to our own kids. We want to have them have it better than we had it, you know. And that's, my son told me this one time too. Mom, you did it, and I do it to my kids. But what I think is this: the younger generation, they don't have any discipline right now. The morals are gone. There's no discipline. And that's what the parents have neglected to raise the children. That is a big problem in this country. And if we want to get out, and this is what I'm saying finally, and I've said this to my husband many times, if this country wants to come back on their feet the way I saw it 53 years ago when I came over, one thing has to happen: a war. To bring the people back to reality. and see it happening. When this happens and everything is flattened down and crumbled down, people wake up. They're building it up again, and they will value this and have respect for little things. And that's what is not there today anymore. There is no respect for little things. They don't appreciate anything anymore. Am I right on this?
Yeah, it's true. It really is true. Things are different than they were.
Actually, I lived in France in 51, 52.
Okay.
And the francs just kept getting weaker and weaker and weaker. And they had the national referendum on a new constitution because the old one wasn't working.
Okay.
And then the gold got banned, and they just moved the decimal over a couple of points. 500 francs became 5 francs. 1,000 francs became 100 francs.
So what advice can you give, for somebody who has some savings, in today's economy, based on what you've both been through?
Buy something that holds its value.
Let me tell you something else. Let me tell you only one thing. Let me tell you one thing about what Francis said. It's really true. I was 10 years old. The war came to an end, right? And we lived in a housing complex. No running water, nothing. Really poor.
And this was where? In Germany?
In Germany.
Yeah.
And let me tell you something else. And you said, what would you advise?
Yeah.
Money is useless. Gold and silver, hard assets, bring you to the war on the field. And let me tell you, I remember I was 8 years old and we had nothing. We had to jump on a moving train, to some little village, begging for food, right? We went, my sister and I, we were not the only one begging for food. We went, never forget this, we went into a farmer's house. There was the farmer sitting with his wife. She sat there, and he sat there and said, he came in, 2 girls, 8 or 9 years old, right, begging for food. And they sat there and he said, look, I'm not going to give you anything. And his wife sat next to her and said, please, she said, look at the 2 little girls. They're really hungry. Why can't we give them a little bit,
Yeah.
And you know what they said? Oh, okay, we give them a piece of bread and a little piece of cheese. And we were so happy to get that, begging for food. Now, I want to tell you, in order to get out of the things, because my parents didn't have all that. My father was a hard worker, He was drafted to the war in 1939. My mother had 3 kids, the bombing of Hamburg, flattening of Hamburg,
Mm-hmm.
When I lived in this little housing complex with nothing, we had nothing. There was a family, she had 3 children, a boy and 2 girls. And her husband was in the war too, but he had a pharmacy before. So he came out of the war. Within 1 week, all the women were helping each other. This woman didn't know how to do housework. My mother and everybody had to help her. This man came back. Within 1 week,
Yeah.
he had a bicycle for his kids. He had a car, and he took his family out of this complex. Do you know how he got it? He had gold and silver.
That's quite a good thing to learn.
That's what gets you through the war. Money is useless. Gold and silver, you survive on that.
They're the true.
And that's the only thing that gets you through
money.
it.
True money.
That is an example I had. That man had gold and silver.
And that's how he
And then he
was
went
able
out to the
survive.
farmers. He got food. He got everything. Gold and silver buys you anything. That's what people want. They don't want your money.